For over 500 years, St James's Palace has been at the heart of royal history. It has witnessed key moments from the private lives of monarchs over the centuries, and also the accession of new monarchs proclaimed officially from here. It remains the seat of the royal court and is a busy palace hosting royal events and ceremonies steeped in history. The first royal residence built here was by Henry VIII in the early 1530s, not for himself, but for the son and heir that he expected Anne Boleyn to deliver him, although it didn't quite work out that way. There's evidence of the love between Henry and Anne on one of the original surviving Tudor fireplaces here, their initials H and A intertwined with lovers' knots. And the exterior is also typical of the Tudor period in that it's brick built around a series of courtyards, and we still have the original gate tower entrance. Because it was intended to be a private retreat for the royal children, it was never given the kind of grand entrance facade of later palaces like Buckingham Palace, for instance. But the major shift in the story of St James's occurs when the King's principal palace of Whitehall burnt down in 1698, and the only available alternative was St James's. So it became the principal residence of monarchs for 200 years until Queen Victoria decided in 1837 that she was going to reside in Buckingham Palace, and so moved out there instead. In the lower corridor, where visitors first enter the palace today, they will see two portraits of King Charles I, who has a long association with the palace. He spent much of his childhood here, 5 of his children were born here, and he spent his final night here at St James's before being marched over to Whitehall Palace for his execution. But his great legacy was for the royal collection. He was one of the greatest art connoisseurs to sit on the throne, amassing one of the most impressive collections of all master paintings, and these remain part of the core of the modern royal collection. This is one of the greatest art collections in the world, and it's a living collection. It is added to, and there's a wonderful example of that in a portrait of Prince Philip, the late Duke of Edinburgh, by Ralph Hymans, showing him standing in Windsor Castle. There are more examples from the royal collection in the grand staircase, and these are a display of some of the diplomatic gifts that were given throughout the centuries. This would often be an opportunity for a country to showcase its local materials and also the extraordinary craftsmanship of its people. A good example of this is a malachite vase that was given by the Empress of Russia to King George IV in 1827, which is a stone vase covered in a wafer-thin veneer of this iridescent green semi-precious stone malachite mined in the Ural Mountains. And to show it's a diplomatic gift, we have a British royal arms in gilded bronze on the front of the pedestal, and on the reverse are the imperial arms of Russia. There are 2 of the original Tudor rooms that survive in the palace. The first was originally a guard chamber, leading to a sequence of rooms that would have taken you for a private audience with the prince's consort, the prince's wife. It was a guard room. It still retained that military connection today. It's displayed as what we call the armoury, with a traditional display of geometrically posed guns and other armaments. It also includes an original piece from Henry VIII's own armoury, which is a gun shield, a circular shield with a gun barrel poking through the middle. From that room, you would then progress to the next room, the presence chamber of the consort, to have a private audience with the Queen or the Princess. And this is displayed with tapestries, as it would have been originally, and today we call it the tapestry room. At a later date, in the 1880s, William Morris and Company were brought in to create new internal decoration at St James's Palace, and in this room you can still see some of the beautiful stencil ornamentation designed by Philip Webb in his practice. For over 200 years, people were presented at court. This was a privilege reserved for people at the very top of society, but in the 18th and 19th century they came in very large numbers, often 4 times a week with up to 2,000 people at a time. They would begin in what we today call the Queen Anne Room, which was really a holding area, and in fact a metal fence was created which the palace staff nicknamed the Pen in order to contain the people until it was time for them to be funneled into the room next door, the Entree Room. In that room you can see portraits of some of the great naval figures of the late 18th, early 19th century, including Admiral Lord Nelson, with wonderful decorative frames of a naval theme. The final point on this journey was in the next room, the Throne Room. The Lord Chamberlain would read out the name card of the person being presented, they would approach the monarch, bow and curtsy, and a conversation would ensue. St James's Palace has the principal throne room of the British monarchy. The throne chair that you see today was created in the early 19th century, but has been reupholstered with the cipher of Queen Elizabeth II. This is the room where part of the Accession Council of King Charles III took place in 2022, which ended with the official proclamation of the new monarch from the balcony here at the palace. The picture gallery was added by Queen Victoria to the processional route, but it also served to display paintings. Traditionally, it simply had state portraits, but today we see a selection of Victorian narrative pictures. One of these was commissioned by Queen Victoria herself from one of her favourite artists, Edwin Landseer. It shows the great lion tamer with an animal act that Queen Victoria was so obsessed by she saw no less than 7 times. The picture gallery also played a role in the accession of King Charles III when the Privy Council had their first meeting there. Today, the palace hosts royal ceremonies and events on a virtually daily basis. And the palace will continue to play an important role at the heart of the British monarchy for centuries to come.